Good morning again, guys, and we are starting this new series called Thank You Notes. And if you've ever seen the movie or the show Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, we are going to do that segment. I just didn't get the time to be able to do it. So the Thank You Notes. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about a few things. Today, we're going to talk about contentment. And a lot of times, we think that we're content, but really, we were raised to strive and want more all the time. Content doesn't seem like, it doesn't resonate well with us. And we're going to talk about, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about envy, and we're going to talk about worry, and we're going to talk about God's provision. So often we miss some of those things, and so we're really going to want to dive into it, and really, with Thanksgiving coming up, and you guys know what right after Thanksgiving is Christmas, and so really what happens is sometimes we take Christmas, we take the debt from Christmas, and we pay it all next year, and we want to avoid that this year. We want to be able to move forward and not carry this year's Christmas into next year. So, let's be content. It's not natural for us to want to settle. Most of us were raised in a house with parents, and we all of us said, I'm going to do this. My parents made, anybody ever figure out how much money their parents made? You know, sometimes you figure out, when I was a kid, my mom worked for the post office. She was a postal inspector, and she retired from the post office. But when she retired only making $38,000 a year. $38,000 a year. It was like, for me, we look at that and go, oh, that's nothing. She worked for them for 20 years and retired making $38,000 a year. I look at my first job. My first job paid me $28,000 a year. The last job that I left and came into pastoring for, I was making $75,000 a year. That's what we strive to do. We strive to make more than what our parents did. It was a goal. It was like, I need to make more than what she did. That's how we knew that we were successful. Nobody as a kid, you never sat down and you said, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be a failure. Nobody ever did that. Nobody ever said, I can't wait to just live on welfare and live off the state, and I just can't wait to be able to do that. You never hear kids say that. Kids always go, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be the president. These are the things that we hear children say all the time, but what do? We even discourage them sometimes. These are things that come out. Another question, it's fairly common with our children. What would you do with $1 million? If you had $1 million, what would you do? These are things that our kids come up with, and it's more of $1 million when they get older. There's a book out there, and it asks children what they would do with $100. Small children, they could be 5 or 6. You give them $100. They go, what would you do with this? And some of the questions are, some of the answers are amazing. Some of them go, I would buy a new house for my mom and dad. The value is completely different. $100 has a complete different value to a 5-year. They go, I'm going to buy 2 cars. I'm going to buy this. We had $100 sitting on the table, and my daughter, who's 8, walked around the corner and go, oh my gosh, $100. We've gotten to the point now where it's like, oh, it's just $100. That's how we've gotten in this culture. 100 years ago, if there was a dollar piece sitting on the table, people would steal it. So what would happen? They would do whatever they had to get to that. They would steal it. Things have changed. Now we're going to open up to Philippians 4. We're going to spend some time, again, with Paul today, and we're going to spend a little bit of time and talk about what was going on. Now this, Philippians 4, or Philippians, was Paul's second letter while incarcerated. When he was, he gets thrown in jail, and it's not the time where he was punished by death. It's the first time that he gets arrested, and he gets there, and this is the second letter he writes while he's incarcerated. And as he's there, you guys know that when people are in jail, they only do one of 2 things. They sit and think about being free, and they write letters, is what they do. And really, this is what's happening there. He's sitting there, and he's thinking about what it would be like to go out and serve and do whatever God has asked me to do, and then he writes about it, and he writes out letters. And really, in this circumstance that he's in, he has like this joy that is just overflowing out of him. He wrote this letter 12 years actually after visiting Philippi. He goes to Philippi in 51. This letter was written in about 63, 62, about 12 years later. He had lots of time to think. He had lots of time to go, and hey, this is what I need to do. These are the things I need to have happen. And there was a reason for writing it. You got to remember is that Paul, no other church was supporting Paul. Literally, he would go from church and city to city, and no other church was supporting him. The only church that sent him money was the church of Philippi. While he was going out and reaching, this is the church that sent him money. Now think about this. If there was no other churches giving to him, Can you imagine how far this message would have pursued if Paul wasn't being supported? Can you imagine how far it would have gotten? It would have stopped. It would have been over because it takes us supporting our missionaries and supporting people going out. And this is what he comes out and he goes, wait a minute, I need to give thanks for this. I need to talk about it. And so he had this reason. He wanted to write a report on his circumstances. He's in jail and he wants to tell everybody, I'm doing okay. Don't worry about me. God has a plan for me here. And then he wanted to thank them for the gift that they sent. They sent him this gift, and we don't know exactly how much money it was, but it was enough money to support him for another 5 years worth of ministry. He wanted to urge them to fulfill their various duties. And then the last thing, he really wanted to warn them about the ever-present danger about false teachers. This is what the book of Philippians is really about. And if you're looking to get started in a Bible, you're like, I want to read the Bible, this is an amazing book of the Bible to read, because guess why? It's only 4 chapters. You can read it really fast, really easy, and get to know it. If you want to start someplace and you're not reading it all, start here. 4 chapters, very easy 4 chapters, lots of instruction, lots of stuff to get you through. Paul was in the midst of very trying circumstances, but these could not and would not abolish and admonish his joy. He had this joy that was just within him. Can you imagine that you're sitting in prison? You're sitting in prison, and and I could have we have a video where it talks about being in a cell, where a lot of times we sit there and we think and we think and we think, and a lot of times we get used to being there. And Paul is sitting there and he goes, I am here for an absolute reason. Do you know what he was doing all the time? They had to keep 2 guards with him the whole time. On either side of him, they had these Roman guards. And at first, they couldn't understand why Paul would get out every once in a while and be roaming the city. Because the guards that were with him, he would convert them to Christians, and they would let him go, and he would come back at night. It was an amazing thing. I mean, you don't hear about this happening. He was like getting day passes. All right, buddy, see you later. We'll see you tonight. Make sure that nobody sees you. And so he would go, but this is what was happening, is that they had to rotate the guards out of him, because what would happen is that he would convert everybody who sat next to him. He would sit there and he would just go, hey, since we're going to be here for 8 hours, I got something to talk to you about. And then he would do that. He would talk, and he would convert people. He converted more people to Christianity just sitting in a cell than most of us will ever do in our lives. Like some of us, we've never been to jail. There are some people out there that have, just to let you know. So you look around and there's some people out there. And so he's sitting there. He's sitting there and he's converting more people. He's sitting there and he's going, hey, look, I got to talk to you about this. And but us, we've got this freedom to go talk around everywhere, and we never even talk about it. We're like, Christianity? No, nobody can know about that. I got to go hide this. He's got this joy. He's reaching people, giving them life, and it is like it overflows out of him. Every time he writes it, he wasn't trying to teach people about joy. When you read this letter, he uses joy and thanksgiving a lot. It's like over and over and over again. He wasn't trying to teach them about it. It just kept coming up because it was in his heart. He had such joy. It just kept overflowing out of him. It was just like, man, I am so happy about what's going on. I'm in jail, but I get to talk to people about Christ. It just overflowed out of him. And us, we don't do that. For us as believers, that's how it's supposed to be. People should see, and they should just be able to detect that joy that that just overflows out of us. They should be able to detect it. They should look at us and go, man, what is different about them? They're Christians. That's what it is, because that joy just continues to come out of us. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. Doesn't matter what's going on. That joy should just be able to pour out of us. People should be able to see it, and they go, doesn't matter if we're in jail. Doesn't matter if we're broke. It doesn't matter whatever's going on. If your bank account has got a negative in front of it, you should still have joy. It was your fault that got you there, not Christ's fault. God didn't put you in the negative in your bank account. You did it. You spent the money. You spent everything that he provided for you, and you just put yourself in the hole, and that's okay. Now you have to learn from it and dig yourself out of it. That's all you have to do. But at this point, we get to the point where we blame God for things. God, why am I in the negative? Because you spent the money, and you spent money you didn't have, and the bank make money off of you. That's what happens. In this letter, I get the impression that Paul wasn't trying to seek happiness. When you read this and you read it all the way through, he wasn't trying to seek happiness. He was trying to seek the Lord. And when he was trying to seek the Lord, happiness found him. As he was looking and as he was pursuing, he was like, man, happiness just seems to pour out and find us when we're actually seeking Jesus. When you start looking and go, why am I not happy? Are you starting to really seek God? Are you pursuing God, or are you pursuing possessions? Because that's what happens. We get to this point where we start pursuing possessions. I would be happy if I had this. I would be happy if I had this. Whatever that this is. All of us have these things that we go, this is what I would like to have in order for me to be happy. Sometimes it's a car. Sometimes it's a new iPhone. Sometimes it's whatever it is. All of us have these things. I go, if I had this, that would make me a little more happier. I'd be able to survive and do what God asked me to do. If I had, it's the same thing we use when we go, I would start tithing if I had this much money in the bank. That's how we get to. These are all things that we put in front of it. We go, this would happen, this would happen. Thanksgiving overflowed easily from Paul. He just overflowed out of him. He didn't care. He was like, I am so happy that Christ is part of my life. That's all. Everything else would fall into place. If you open up to Philippians 4, and we're going to read verses 10 through 20. And when you start looking at this, and you start reading, and you start looking at what he's talking about here, and he goes, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at least you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in poverty or in want, or plenty and want, And I can do all of this through him who gives me strength. Yet it was good of you to share in my troubles. Moreover, as you Philippians know, in the early days of your acquaintance with the gospel, when I set out from Macedonia, not one church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving except only you. Think about this. One church gives to him. One church supports him. And they continue to support him. They continue to take care of him. And he goes, I am so, so thankful. Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for helping me get through this. Thank you. Thank you. That's all he does. In his circumstances, in the circumstances he's in, he looks at this and he goes, I'm content. And what we need to learn is that for us, we need to learn that in all of our circumstances, we need to express contentment. In all of our circumstances, we need to express content. I know that I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you guys really, the verses that were key were the ones that I just read. But in all of our circumstances, we need to express contentment. He tells us in Philippians 4:11, I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. While Paul was grateful, he was grateful at this point, but he didn't want him to think that he had his hand out. This is what happens. He didn't want them to think that he had his hand out. Where a lot of times, that's when we ask for something, like as a church, we ask for money because we do. That's what it takes for us to get through things. Everybody goes, oh God, here comes the money conversation. That's what happens. People duck out of here. They're like, I got to go use the restroom right as soon as we get ready to collect tithe. They're like, oh, nope, I missed that envelope passing, but that's what happens. Because they think that we always have our hands out. That's what they think. It's like, what does the church need more money? Why is the church always after more money? Why? Well, guess what? This is how we do ministry. But Paul was like this. He was like, I don't have my hand out. I don't want you to get the impression that I do. I mean, come on, think about it. I'm in jail. I don't really need your money right now. But they continued to support, and they continued to give, and they continued to take care of him. What was the key to Paul's contentment? He says that I can do all of this. I can do all of this through him who gives me strength. Who are you leaning on? Where's the pillar at? So we're a couple slides ahead there, Ryan. And so we're at Philippians 4:13. It says, I can do all of this who gives me strength. Sometimes we find ways to be content with the people around us. Sometimes we try and find people around us to help support us and help us be content. A lot of times we find it in our friends. We're like, this person will help me be content. They will help me they'll ground me, they'll help me keep me down. A lot of times we find those people. We find, it's like, how do we grow those? Sometimes we try and find contentment in our spouse. Our spouse levels us out. We always try and talk and bounce ideas off of them. And they go, oh, well, we should do this. And they help bring us down. That's what happens all the time. Our spouse tends to bring, because a lot of times, you ever notice that in relationships? Think about this. And one person in the relationship is generally they like to spend money. There's one person in every relationship that they love spending money. And the other person is like a saver. In my wife and I's relationship, the problem is we both like spending money. That's the problem. But in your relationship, look at if you've been married, if you ever had a relationship like that, there's one person who likes to save, there's one person who likes to spend. Just look at it. I mean, you can always look at it. Now, you might both enjoy spending money because everybody likes to spend money. There's like pure joy that comes out of that. But there's one person that tends to look at it and go, we have to worry about paying the PG&E bill at the end of the month. We have to worry about taking care of this. We have to worry about where the other person's like, more money will come in before then. We'll be good. And so this is what he's like. He's like, the spouse has leveled us out. Well, he's found Christ that levels him out. He goes to God, and God goes, no, you don't really need that. Just go ahead and calm down a little bit. You don't need that. Some of us, we found that person as a bartender. Sometimes you go to a place, and that bar, I used to tend bar years ago. And when I did that, you would have no idea the stories that you would get from people. You would sit there, and you would just lean back, and they would just pour out. It's like, oh my gosh, is this what hairdressers feel like? Because they get so much there. They would just, blah, 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 and you're like, oh man, you should stop. Just there's no more drinks for you. You should go home. And that's what and that's how it got. It was like, wow, what is going on? It's like, this is where we try and find contentment, by expressing ourselves and talking to people. Where he goes, no, this isn't where you're supposed to go. This is not the direction you're supposed to go. It says, Paul wrote later that when he was forsaken by others, he said, the Lord stood with me and strengthened me. That's 2 Timothy 4:17, if you want to write that down. People fail. That's what we have to remember. People fail. Yes, super Christians and pastors, they fail as well. That's what happens. People fail. They are going to let you down. Your husband or your wife or whatever, it's going to happen. Whether it's signing up for insurance or whatever it is, they're going to fail you. It's going to happen. You're going to be like, why didn't you clean up the house? Fail. That's what happens. It's part of life. Sometimes we just need to remember something, is that even though that people fail us, the Lord always stands strong next to us. He's always there. Always. It's us that continues to walk away from him. That pillar of strength has always been right next to us, and we walk away from him. We're like, nope, I got to go over here. I got my own thing I got to take care of. One of the best loved psalms out there. You can hear it. If you read and you look at the Bible at all, it's Psalms 23:1, and you should write this one down as well. It says, the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. What pillar are you leaning against? What are you up against that makes it to where you're always wanting? I will tell you is that when we started pursuing Christ, like my wife and I, we dove in and we're like, this is the direction we're going to go. A lot of those wants just went away. They just did. Guys, I will tell you is that sometimes it goes back, because we look back and we go, man, do you miss those times? Because we lived in a beautiful home. We had nice cars. But it was lonely. It was hard. And sometimes you get to the point where you can live high on that hog, and then all of a sudden it falls off, and then you try and maintain that status. And it drives you into debt. Instead, if we would have leaned on God when we have it good, as well as when we have it bad, maybe circumstances would have changed. Things would have been a little different for us. You look, and things that would sometimes things change. And who is the shepherd at your house? Who is the shepherd? Because so often we make decisions based upon this being our shepherd. This is where the shepherd is. And if God is your shepherd, then you'll have no want. If money is your shepherd, that's all you'll have. You'll want more money. That's where you'll be at. And what happens is most of the time we get caught up in the emotion of buying and seeing what everybody else has. And what we really need to do is to not get caught up in the emotion. It says, don't get caught up with emotion. 2 Corinthians 12:9, he said to me, my grace is enough for you, because power is made perfect in weakness. So I'll gladly spend my time bragging about my weakness so that Christ's power can rest in me. When you're weak this Christmas season, because you will be, you're going to be weak, especially if you have children at home. You're going to really be weak, because they're going to go, I want this. If you have a teenager, they're going to go, I want an iPhone 6. I want to remind you something. An iPhone 6, $600. An iPhone 6 Plus, $1,100. I want you to remind you of that, okay? So when you think that you're not paying for that just because you got it at $0, you're paying for that. I want you to know that. When you buy it, it's part of the contract. You're paying for that phone. Think about it. $1,100. You think you're going to be paying for that next year? You're probably going to be paying for that next year. When you start looking at this, what's coming up for Christmas, your kids are going to go, I want this video game system, or I want this, or I want this, or I want that. Guess what? I saw a commercial just this morning. The Xbox One, or whatever the new one is going to be on sale, $100. Another $100 off. What it's going to do, it's going to cause people to go out and act like fools. Because they want this game system. They waited a year for it, and now they're going to go out and they're going to do whatever it takes to get it. You're going to put yourself in debt over a video game. You're going to put yourself to where you're having to pay for it. This is where we get caught up in the emotion. I want to make my kids happy. I want them to be happy. Now, you know how you make them happy? You bring them into church, and you start teaching them who God is, and who the Lord is, and who to stand next to, and how to get strength there. They don't need to find strength in possession. They need to find strength in God and with the people around them. So here's some. I'm going to give you some tips. As you're going through and you're making some shopping and you're looking at things, and what I want you to have to do is, number one, anybody ever gone shopping for food when you're hungry? Anybody ever have that happen? You know, have you ever noticed how much fuller the cart gets? You're like, man, where did all this, and it's always full of stuff that when you get home, you're like, why do we buy all this junk food? It's like stuff that you could eat, like, you're like, I'll take 5 boxes of Cheez-Its, you know, and that's what happens. You're like, I'm hungry, because a couple days ago, Melissa goes, are you hungry? I go, why do you ask? She's like, because the cart is full of junk food. And, well, maybe I am hungry, you know, and so, but that's what happens. So when you go out and you're doing Christmas shopping this year, when you have a list, it makes things different. It makes things better. When you walk in and you have a list and you go, this is the things that I'm going to buy, it's better than walking in and just wandering the aisles. Well, what are we going to get little Joey? Or where are we going to get such and such? Or what are we going to get here? Because then you start grabbing things. Instead of going in with a plan and going, this is what we're getting for Christmas. So here's what you need to do. You need to pray about how much to spend in total this year. So how much money are you going to spend for Christmas? How much? All of us have a number that we've already started to think about. Because guess why? Christmas is a month away. We've already all got this number that's sitting on the top of our minds and going, what are we going to spend this year for Christmas? Some of us, we're going, well, it's going to be $100 because we're broke. And then there's other people that are going to spend $500. And there's other people that are going to go spend $1,000. So here's what I want you to start doing. If you're going to go off and you're going to spend up to $50 for somebody, you need to pray about it for an hour. You need to think about it and go, this is what I'm going to spend, and you need to pray about it for an hour. If you're going to spend, say, up to $500, this Christmas season, you're going to spend $500. You need to pray about it for a day. You need to just really spend some time in prayer with God about it. You know, and let's say that you're going to spend $1,000. Guys, by the way, the average consumer in Northern California spends $1,000 at Christmas, the average consumer. So that means that some people are spending some real money because we don't spend that much money. But if you're going to spend that much money, you need to pray about it for a week. You know, that's what you just really got to do. You just got to spend some time in prayer and you just got to go, before I go out and spend this kind of money, number one, do I have that kind of money in the bank? If you don't have that kind of money in the bank, then you can't spend that kind of money. If you're going to put it on credit cards, then you're not really buying for Christmas. You're buying for February or whatever. However long it's going to take you to pay it off, that's when you can truly own that item. So, $1,000, pray about it for a week. If you're gonna spend $10,000, we know some people that spent $10,000 last year. If you're gonna spend $10,000 while you're out shopping, get me some stuff, okay? No, I'll give you the list. I've got some stuff for you. You know, I mean, you can just get me some things. But really, if you're gonna spend that kind of money, you need to pray about it for a month. Anytime that you spend more than $1,000, you just need to spend a good month in prayer about it. I'm telling you that if you started doing these things just in your whole life, just all the way through, not even just for Christmas, you go out and you go, hey, we're going to buy a car, and you're going to spend $30,000 on a car, pray about it for a week. Pray about it for 2 weeks. All of a sudden, you don't need that $30,000 car because God will give you contentment. You go, no, you don't need that one. I found something that's perfect. Melissa and I were out shopping for homes. You know, we're out bouncing from place to place, and she goes, this is going to be your perfect home. It's like a block away from the in-laws. and literally a block away from the in-laws. And it would have been perfect because the kids could have just walked down there, instead of, but we go in and they wanted more money. They were like, we're going to have you spend more money than we were really comfortable spending. And so, we could have afforded the house, and we go, no, you know what? We need to go pray about it. We need to pray about it. And so we go home, and we prayed about it. And guess what we find? We find a house that night that's $50,000 cheaper. It's a bigger house, and we knew the owner. And so we moved in, and it literally, just by praying about something, instead of just jumping into it and going, oh, the emotion got me caught up, and just signing your name away. You pray about it, and all of a sudden, God goes, well, wait a minute, that's not the direction I want you to go. This is the direction I want you to go. We get so caught up in the heat of emotion. We're like, that's what I want. That's where I want to go. When you're in the store and you're feeling weak, seek God. When you're in the store and you're feeling weak, seek God. When you look at it and go, oh, I want to get that, just go, God, give me the strength. Tell me which direction to go. I promise you, not only will the people around you be looking at you like, what are you doing? But also, you will find that strength, and you'll go, I don't need that. Or that is the direction I'm supposed to go. Seek God when you get to that point. The other thing you need to remember is that God will supply for the needs. God will supply for the needs. He tells us, he goes, and my God will meet all of your needs according to the riches and the glory of Christ Jesus. That's Philippians 4:19. Now, what I want to make very clear, very, very clear, this does not say that you are going to become rich. Okay? This does not say that. It does not say that, you're going to never experience want or need. You're never going to experience that stuff. But rather, it tells us that God will supply for the needs of his people. That's what it tells us. Sometimes we get a little confused. He does this by meeting the need sometimes. Sometimes he does this by actually meeting the need. And sometimes he does this by giving us the strength to go through the need. Sometimes whatever it is, whatever the circumstance that's in front of us or whatever's going on, sometimes he gives us the strength to face that need. Instead of just pouring into us and going, here you go, take this. In Psalms 18:29, it says, for by you I can run upon a troop, and by my God I can leap over the wall. For us, we always prefer to leap over the wall of need. We always prefer to leap over the wall of need. That's the first thing we want to do. We go, oh, need? God, take this away immediately. And so we can jump over it and never experience need again. That's what we want. We don't ever really want to think that he's preparing us to face the battle of that troop that's in front of us. Because a lot of times that need is right there and we need to get through it. The possibility is that he is preparing us. God is enabling us to go through that troop. He's enabling us to prepare for that battle. A lot of times he's giving you a need and he goes, you can get through this. God takes us right through that need by giving us the strength as we go. He just continues to give you strength. He continues to give this and just pour into you and go, look, just stay with me. When you try and back up, he's right there. He's like, just stay with me. Keep going. Pursue me. Remember this. David went through this when he faced Goliath. David goes and he faces Goliath, and he's sitting there, and he's on the sidelines. And can you imagine this? David was like 5 foot tall. Okay, so remember this. So David was like 5 foot. My wife is taller than he was. And Goliath, by 1 inch. No. But Goliath is like 7'6". So if you're 5 foot, 2 foot 6 inches, that's a giant. That's what it looks like. That's what you're like. Oh my gosh, you're huge. And I mean, a 7'6" I'm 6'3". Somebody's 7'6", they look like a giant to me. And so, but David's afraid. That's what it is. And he goes there and he seeks God. And what could have happened is that he could have walked up and God could have made Goliath just vanish. He could have just vaporized him. It could have just went away. He could have walked up and Goliath would have been gone. And everybody would have looked and be like, man, that was pretty amazing. But he gave him the strength. He gave him the strength to go and face and defeat him. Instead of just going, I can take care of that for you, he gave him the strength to go up to face the issue, to face the need that was in front of him, and to defeat it. How often have we ran from it? Have we ran from the need that we're supposed to face, that we're supposed to cross through, that we're supposed to grow from? Because a lot of times we do. A lot of times we run from that need. in your lives, needs that seem to get vaporized, that it just, sometimes you have, oh man, there's a need. This bill showed up, and needs that get vaporized like that, you don't appreciate them. When you've gone through and you've struggled and God has given you the strength, you know what happens? It shows how he worked in you and how God has delivered, and it shows his power. But it's so often we go, nope, it's got to go, it's got to disappear. That's not how God works sometimes. God does provide, God does take care of those needs, and sometimes he does make problems vanish. But for the most part, he gives us the strength to work through them. He gives us the strength to rely on others to help us get through them. How often has a problem come up in your life that you just tried to handle on your own rather than seeking God and asking for deliverance and asking for guidance, which way you're supposed to go? You're like, I can take care of this. A lot of times, you can't. A lot of times, you need that person that's next to you. A lot of times, you need that person that's going to help you grow and help you get through it. In your life, in all of our circumstances, you need to express contentment. Whatever the circumstances, just express that contentment. Don't get caught up by emotion. Don't. And remember that God will always supply for the need. Remember those things. I promise you that this year, if you start doing that, you will have a Thanksgiving, a true Thanksgiving, instead of a debt-riddled Christmas. You'll have Thanksgiving, and you'll be able to go through it, and you'll be able to actually enjoy the new year. When you can go, I want to start new year, and I want to do things differently. You'll be able to actually do that because you won't be carrying this year's debt, this year's Christmas into next year's Christmas. You can make a change. You can do some things differently. You can start doing what God has asked you to do and start living the life and start having these thank you notes and start remembering is that God will always provide. He will always supply for the need. But you have to be seeking him. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much. Thank you for giving us that contentment through these circumstances that we continue to put ourselves into sometimes. When we don't pursue you, we tend to get lost. We get lost within ourselves, and we end up trying to do what we want to do instead of pursuing you to find that contentment, to find that peace while seeking you. Now we ask for the strength to be able to pursue you, to find that contentment, to stop getting caught up in the emotion. We ask that strength to be able to start acting like a Christian, to be able to go out and go, God, people can see this abundant joy just overflowing out of me. They can see that I'm a follower. We know that you will always provide for our needs. You tell us the birds and the bees don't worry about this. Why do we? God, give us some sense of security there so we know that, so we can feel that. God, we need that. We need that strength. We need that guidance. We need your wisdom to get through this upcoming season. God, thank you for all that you are doing and all that you're doing through each one of us. And all of this we pray in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.